Slam Pigs Union Smack right here at Hibiki TMD. We are back for another round this week. Got another retro pay-per-view show recap lined up. But before we get to any of that, the news this week, once again, as always, let me not stumble over my words. I'm so excited to have back Matt Tennant, as always. What's going on, man? How you been? How was your week? And where can everyone catch you?
I had quite a good week, Travis. Started driving this week, going slowly, but yeah, not a bad week. And thank you everyone for joining us again. Thank you for your support. Means a lot to both of us. And you can catch me on Twitter at @ThePerfectTenant. You can buy our very first Union Smack shirt from unionsmack.bigcartel.com. So please go and order that. Thank you to people who have ordered it so far. And Travis, the whore of Hibiki TMD, where can people find you?
Well, that shot's fired out of the gate, and I'm so excited. And thank you, Matt. Matt's the one that set it up. Finally, we got some merch for the show.
Yes.
A couple of you have picked up a few already. Thank you guys so much. Specifically, our buddy Jim, drink a beer, play a game means the world.
Yes,
it's exciting. I love the shirt. More designs. I put a poll out too. What should the next design be more? So look for that. More merchandise in the future. As always, follow me on Twitter at the Hibiki TMD. The Reset Button, Slam Pigs Podcast, Hibiki Pro, Never Drew a Dime. So much more coming your way. Look for many more shows in the future, as always, because I don't stop, like Matt said. I'm a cyborg, borderline.
Yes.
What's been going on in the news this week, though, Matt?
Quite a bit. Quite a bit. And I think we're going to start off, Travis, with the announcement yesterday, I believe it was, from WWE that the UK tournament isn't going to be on the network live on the 18th and 19th, as many people thought it would be.
We're starting off again this week salty, like last week with the hurricane. Yes, we're both upset and pissed off about this dumbass decision, but go ahead, Matt. More details on this.
Well, we don't actually have a reason, because that would be too simple, obviously. We've been promised an announcement around midweek, the week starting, the 18th, announcement about a weekly show. So maybe that's on its way. But as for the tournament, we've got no reason, Travis. They just come out and said it won't be live. It'll be broadcast in two parts on June the 25th and June the 26th on the network. Pre-recorded, obviously. And, I've speculated on Twitter with, a few good people. Why? There is no good reason. People have said that maybe it's a time difference. Maybe it's the poor ticket sales. I see that, of course I do, but there's arguments against both, The time difference.
The time zone one, strictly because of the Saudi Arabia show, was on at like 9 a.m. or 12 p.m. or whatever. I think it's the poor ticket sales, honestly, is what it is. But I think they want to have time because it's right around the corner. They're not selling. They want to have time to edit it so it doesn't look like one of those, those pictures you see on Twitter of like a SmackDown taping with like half the arena full.
Exactly. But the thing is that the argument is, like, one, they've been known to give tickets away free in the past to fill their arenas. That's nothing new. Do that. Don't promote this tournament as being live and then, like, a week and a bit before it happens, go, actually, it's not actually going to be live for you watching on TV. Wankers. Like, what the fuck? I feel conned. I do. I feel a bit conned. And if this is down to poor ticket sales, then, they've got themselves to blame because they basically shit the bed with the 2017 tournament. They didn't capitalise on its popularity. And in the meantime, only Pete Dunne has really gone to an effort to keep the title relevant. So if this is down to poor ticket sales, then WWE have only got themselves to blame.
Not even that. The way the first tournament was even promoted before it aired was drastically different from this go round.
Yeah,
I mean, we've seen like little spurts on like an episode of NXT, but when they do that, at the same time they're doing promos or commercials for the Mayhem Download Festival or for whatever, and they feel like the same commercial. So when I see them, I'm like, is this the Download Festival? Is this the tournament? What the hell is this? And it's just like flashes and glimpses. There's no real specifics. It's just like a hodgepodge of like pictures of guys on NXT in the UK just with the logo. Last year was treated like a historical first time ever thing. We're crowning a new champion, which they were. That made sense, but it was just it had a bit more air and class to it, I feel like, Matt, last time.
Yeah, this time around it feels like this is just a prelude to the weekly show coming, so people don't forget about it before these weekly shows are announced. It doesn't feel that special anymore. It just feels like a necessity to sort of lay the foundations because they've left it so long, since last year.
Right. And it even blows my mind how little went into the promotion when they're co-branding with NXT on top of it. You would think they would put some steam into that, treat it like a takeover. But no,
Yes.
Who am I?
Nope.
There's also other things going on besides that involving talent in the WWE that does the back and forth. I know Pete Dunne captured some gold this week, correct?
Yes, he did, with Millie McKenzie, who's a British female wrestler. A lot of people have responded really well to this on Twitter. They teamed up in a, it was meant to be a shock thing. I don't know whether Pete Dunne was meant to be there, but they defeated the Besties at Pro Wrestling Revolver World Warriors to capture their tag team championships on June the 1st. And you know what? This girl, I hadn't heard a lot about her before. I'd heard bits and bobs. She's only 17, Travis. She's not 18 till next week. And she's already looking like a star. People have they've flocked to her Twitter to give her their support. And from what I've seen, her and Pete Dunne, they make a really good odd couple. And I wouldn't be against WWE bringing her in for something. Mae Young Classic #2 springs to mind because she's a very, very good wrestler. And at 17 years old, she's a current Defiant Women's Champion as well. So
she turns 18 soon, though, right? They would definitely wait till she was 18 for the liabilities and just the
she's 18
legalities.
June the 17th, she's 18, yeah.
Right on. Well, congrats to Pete Dunne, and that's got to be huge for her. I'm sure that's because she's so young. That's got to be someone she's looked up to for years over there.
Yeah, definitely. And, go and check her out on Twitter. Check her out on YouTube as well, because I've heard great things.
Speaking of great things, Toni Storm also in the news this week, Matt.
Yes. Now, what we talked about last week, Travis, was the possibility of the contract Toni Storm, was supposedly on with WWE. Her possibly beating Shayna Baszler for the NXT Women's Championship at Night 2 of the UK tournament. We got quite excited about this. And then this week, WWE just take out that pin and pop. Just a little pop our bubble. Because now we're hearing that Toni Storm has only actually been contracted for the 2 UK shows, which will, of course, be in a fatal 4-way on Night 1. And then when she wins that, it's not an if anymore. When she wins that, she'll face Shayna Baszler on Night 2. WWE have no more plans to use her yet in NXT or the Mae Young Classic, which is just a bit
so it's the Mae Young Classic all over again with her. It was, a nice payday, some exposure, most definitely, because her indie bookings, the rates shot after she appeared in the Mae Young Classic. Maybe it's on her end, too, because I've said it for months since the Mae Young Classic. Why would she want to go? She's making a killing on the indies, tearing it up, main eventing over guys like Walter and Dragunov. Just killing it right now.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same, if I was Toni Storm, at the same time, I want the NXT exposure, but with the side note. Like I said, the contract Pete Dunne's got where he can go away and, still main event elsewhere around the world.
Right. Exactly. And
but
I wonder if because they have deals like that too, Matt, like if they have pull in their character, like Pete doesn't want to be on the main roster a lot because he sees what they do with the main roster guys. You know what I mean? So he prefers and he suggests that his character mainly stay on NXT with like that one off with Enzo and England Raw, but
yeah. I can see that, but I think WWE are stupid not to have pulled out all the stops to offer a role on NXT because she can do both. We talked last week about NXT's pre-recorded over a few consecutive nights, leaving her the rest of the month to go and do everything else. But WWE have, for some reason, thought we'll just hire her for 2 nights and that'll be good enough, which sort of now makes it feel like she's a side attraction. They've just brought her in to boost the ratings and maybe the ticket sales, and she's so much more than that.
Dare I say, it's kind of a different time, too, just with WWE and how they handle talent in general, whereas not even maybe 5 years ago, we don't see that annual spring cleaning of talent anymore. We'll see 1 or 2, but it's not like 7 or 8 guys. They don't cut the fat anymore. It seems like for good and bad, they've gotten a bigger heart in that aspect with, they don't want to cut their talent and give them more chances. But on the other hand, you're seeing guys like Mojo Rawley, Kurt Hawkins, all this constantly on their TV. If you cut the fat and you're not paying useless, and I'm sorry, all respect, Kurt Hawkins is actually a good worker, but the way he's handled is useless on air. Mojo Rawley right now, useless. Cut the fat, you have more money. You're making more money now on the other hand. Shoot higher. Offer Tony Storm something higher, for Christ's sakes. Even though we don't know what she's been offered, I'm assuming it's not like a Sasha Banks or something huge,
Yeah, no, it's last year for the UK tournament. I think they got like 16 grand each. I'm gonna go out and say that they've probably offered Tony Storm something just under the 50 grand mark to work 2 nights.
Right.
If you'd have offered her that a month, on a monthly basis to work NXT, then I'm sure she'd have bit their hand off for, a regular wage a month plus what she's earning on the indies.
But look, and people are going to argue, well, they're only going to make like what? Not even 10 on a Progress show, right? But the difference is they're hitting all these shows over there, so it adds up over time. That's the beauty of still being a journeyman wrestler who's a draw. Look at Cody right now.
Yes. Exactly, and to some wrestlers, their reputation is more important than the money. They might only be making less than 10 grand on a Progress show, but they're putting on better matches than WWE could produce in 6 months. So, Tony Storm is one of them people, I think, who is more bothered about the work rate and the product that she's putting out rather than, the cash that she's getting back for it.
Yeah, you could argue that too, most definitely. And Pete Dunne also strikes me as someone like that. Trent Seven, Tyler Bate, all those guys, they take their craft seriously. You can tell just the way they work a match. All you got to do is just take a peek at how they tell the story. You can tell that they care about what they put out as opposed it's quantity over quality, or quality over quantity. Backwards other way around. I'm all over the place today.
And that's going to upset some people in WWE, obviously, because with the likes of Kevin Dunn, who care more about anything else than the wrestling.
Is this Neville news you were telling me about, by the way?
Oh, well, there was a YouTube video, Neville's contract status. He's living over here in the UK now with his wife. Has been since he walked out on WWE in October. There's rumours, and obviously it's Neville news, so you can probably take these with a pinch of salt.
Hashtag Neville news. I smell a shirt, man. Him and like Jimmy Olsen from Superman dressed up as like a news reporter. Go ahead, guys. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, there's the back into our second shirt. Right. He doesn't want to come back to America to work if it's for WWE. He's against that. He's apparently said no. I'm going to say it, and if it's wrong, it's wrong. We've said take it with a pinch of salt. They're thinking now about introducing him to the UK show when it takes off, so he can stay in the UK. I don't know whether his contract would allow him to work elsewhere or just solely with WWE in the UK. But I think if that is true, that's a much better deal for Neville because he doesn't have to deal with Vince McMahon. He doesn't have to deal with the shit that he put up with in 205 Live and on Raw. And I think the UK show will be a better fit for Neville than going back to, Raw. Even though SmackDown has got enough heels, he could be a top star on SmackDown if they pushed him right. But he doesn't. He doesn't want to go back to WWE main roster, Travis. And who can blame him? Let's be honest.
Neville, looking back now, the blinders are on. Seeing his first run now, we can call it. They never knew what they had until it was too late. Until he was just, you know what? You want to stifle me with this 205 Live crap? I'm going to go out there as the champ and shove it up your ass, and I'm going to kill it every time I go out. It didn't matter. I feel like equate that to a talent being in the Attitude Era, and they're like, well, I was this champion. I should be higher on the card. And they go out, they give him the European title, but he goes out there and treats it like the world title. That's what Neville did. And
I agree.
You could put him anywhere, Raw, SmackDown, any promotion right now, he would be on the top of the card. He's that good. And who knew? It was also shame on them. We never saw any glimpses of that Neville before it was too late for us as fans, too, before he was fed up. So we never got to see how good he could be because of their bullshit. But hey,
Yeah.
I could see him being a surprise, unadvertised, just popping up like they kind of did with Aleister Black in the first show as Tommy End versus Neville. Just pop. That crowd will go insane over there in England if he would just show up as a surprise. Could you imagine, Matt?
Yeah, that would be massive, wouldn't it? And why not? You know, he's still under contract to WWE. They won't release him because they're too fucking pig-headed. So I'm sure Neville would be open to, you know, a surprise at the Albert Hall maybe, and then work in the UK shows. Let's be honest, it's better than sitting at home and stagnating and being bored and bitching about, yeah, they won't let me do this, they won't give me that.
Right. I wonder, do you know the specifics of when he's officially expired under contract with the company?
I don't, and I can't find it anywhere. I mean, I might not be looking hard enough, but all I know is that they've frozen his contract and he can't wrestle anywhere else. And they're dead set against releasing him. They won't do it.
Such a shame. It's such a shame, man. He could be just making so much for his family right now in the Indies. Can you imagine him being booked over there right now?
It'd be massive. Progress, my God.
Anything else to round out our news this week, Matt?
Yes, the date for Pete Dunne versus Dragunov from WXW has been confirmed for September the 30th at Wembley Arena, which is, I think, is what we said, isn't it? Where the Progress WXW co-branded show, I think it is. So that's been confirmed today. Tickets are on sale if you want to attend that, and who wouldn't. And the last bit of news, Travis, is Revolution Pro Wrestling over here in the UK have seemingly cut ties with WWE. They put out a statement at the end of last week saying that all contracted WWE UK stars, Bate, Dunn, Wolfgang, Seven, etc., will no longer be able to work with their indie stars.
We saved the biggest news for last, obviously, this week. A lot of people just not happy about this. I mean, but what do you think? You think the talent is happy about this? Because that's what matters. It doesn't matter what we think. Do you think Wolfgang likes? I can't think he would.
I honestly, Wolfgang, Dunn, Bate, Seven, Mark Andrews have all signed new WWE contracts, so I can't see them being that bothered about it because it's one promotion. If this was to spread and other promotions were to take, you know, this stance, then I can see it becoming a problem for them because that then, you know, cuts down their opportunity for work outside of WWE. But as far as Revolution Pro Wrestling goes, I just think it's a dumb decision for them. I know there's a big emphasis over here about indie promotions staying independent, but it's just there's a phrase over here. I don't know whether you've got it over there. Cutting their nose off to spite their face. You know, it's dumb. They are now stopping themselves earning like massive box offices, massive amounts of money from stars like, you know, Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate, etc. And I don't, you know, Revolution Pro Wrestling isn't that big. You know, it's not as big as Progress or, you know, or them promotions over here. So I just don't know what they're thinking. Honestly, and can you imagine if you're a Revolution Pro Wrestling wrestler? Can you imagine being told that you'll no longer profit from, you know, them stars being on our shows? We're just going back to normal box office now.
Could it be liability things too? If they get hurt in another promotion while somehow contracted, they gotta, you know, damages.
That could be part of it, but no one else seems to be bothered. Like, it's literally just them that are bothered with all this right now.
Because I know liability's got to be on their mind, considering CM Punk and Cabana just won in court like 2 days ago or whatever it was.
Congratulations to them.
Yeah, good on those. I mean, Punk's a prick and he hates all of us, but good on anyone that stands up to the Empire. You know what I mean? So that was.
Yeah, I echo them sentiments. Yes.
Chris Amon, by the way, sidebar. Talk about this 2 seconds, Matt. Chris Amon is such a schmuck and just this robotic How is he a doctor? I could be a doctor. I could be a surgeon if that guy's a doctor. Anyway, sorry to get off track, man.
Fine, that's fine.
Z-Pack,
I can't see Progress or ICW taking this stance because there's massive talks about them once again going to the WWE network. But, you know, can you imagine after the strides that have been made in British wrestling, you know, them stars going to a main worldwide, global, whatever you want to call it, stage, promoting the UK indie circuit to eyes that, you know, wouldn't have been placed on it otherwise, and then for these indie promotions just to go, no, actually we're shutting the door on it now. We don't want that anymore. I just think it'd be such a shame for them to lose so much.
Yeah. It's confusing. It's also confusing. We need more details on that. You know what I mean?
We do. And if we get any, we'll bring you them in. You know.
Well, we love to bring everyone in.
Or...
That's for sure. Is there anything else on our news list this week before we go to break and get to Insurrection 03?
There isn't. I think we are done with the news this week, Travis. Unless there's anything you wanted to add, or
not really. I mean, we started out with slow news. A couple days ago, we're like, I don't know what we're gonna do for news, and then it's like in 2 days we got tons of shit. So it's like Thanksgiving.
Exactly. And next week, can I just say, next week we will have the results of the first round of the UK tournament, which will happen on the 8th to the 10th of June at the Download Festival.
We've been doing this show for what? In total, not breaks counting to, like a year at least.
Yeah.
Finally, we're going to review a UK show for the WWE, what it all started out to be, not just retro. So look for that next week. Until then, yes, it is time before we go to break. When we come back, Insurrection 03 right here. Slam Pigs Union Smack. Stick around.
Hey Colin, did you get the cardboard cutout of Console Kev?
Did I ever? It's amazing.
Oh, I think so too. I hate that guy. Kevin, what are you doing here?
Just eavesdropping on all the bad things you say about me. My usual Wednesday.
Oh, well, did you at least prepare for the Retro Gaming Podcast?
Absolutely not.
Oh, God, that figures. Alright, it's okay. I'll take it from here. Basically, we pick a theme every time, and we pick a number of games based on that theme. You know, just like our first episode where it lasted forever and we talked about space games.
Yeah, and other good, all the mainstream systems and games you love, like the 3DO, the Atari Jaguar.
Oh, come on. Colin, you back me up here. The 3DO is awesome, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were friends. I mean, it's cool. Alright.
If you want to hear three guys talk about games that are bad because JD picked them all, and good games that Kevin picked, join us.
Who here wants to see a bunch of nerds talking video games with a little bit of anime thrown in there? Nobody? Just me? Damn!
Well, speaking of anime, Colin, we have an anime cast as well.
Yes, we do. All retro anime. Many of which I have never heard of myself. And I'm a weeb!
Very similar premise there. We pick a retro anime, at least 15 years or older, and we review it every episode. We also keep up on all the modern stuff, all the seasonal things from the year. Hey, Kevin, you just got back into wrestling, right?
I did.
Oh my god, did you know we also have a wrestling cast that just started?
I do now, because nobody tells me anything.
Ah, well, what do you think of the big dog these days?
He still sucks.
Well, that's good. Well, luckily, we just don't complain about WWE stuff. We also talk about a lot of the latest and greatest from the rising indie scene, New Japan, and Ring of Honor.
I like rings and honor.
Well, you should definitely listen to the Red Leaf Retrocast. We have such a wide range of topics, ideas to discuss, and just anything to review. It's fantastic. Don't you guys think so?
It's alright!
Absolutely. And thanks again for the Sailor Moon episode. That's got me a lifetime supply of salt for my fries. From the fans. Ha!
That's the Red Leaf Retrocast. All things gaming, anime, and wrestling, found on all your favorite podcasting.
We are back, Slam Pigs Union Smack. It's that time. Matt Tennant, let's go back to the Reign of Terror. 2003 this time, another Insurrection pay-per-view. This one, I don't know if it was better than the last one we covered, but I will say for this show, Insurrection 03, Matt Tennant, they had a specific stage design for the pay-per-view.
Yes.
So happy.
So happy, and this looked like a proper pay-per-view set. You know, you could have put this on Backlash or Judgment Day, and it would have looked good. And like last week's, where we just got the Raw set with an Insurrection logo. So well done WWE for that. And can we just note, Travis, that this took place literally a few days after Freddie Blassie passed away, and there's a nice little tribute, coming up later in the show for that.
Yeah, this also took place after what, Backlash 03?
Yes.
The time period. Do we have the date for the show?
Day. Yeah, the date was June the 7th, 2003, and we are now at the Telewest Arena in Newcastle. One of the roughest cities in England to pick, but
yeah.
crowd held their own, as we'll find out.
Is it like England's version of like Philly over here? Is Newcastle?
Yeah, it's as rough as sandpaper. And if you're listening in Newcastle, we love you. Just your town's a shithole. So.
This is also during the time they were on the road, on the Raw brand, during the first draft, was Bad Blood, 2003. They had brought that pay-per-view back from 97. A lot of angles going into this. We'll cover all of that. But you guys see it on the thumbnail. In the main event picture at this time was Kevin Nash, the Reign of Terror, like I said. But there were dark matches, not on the network version. Like we said, this was the Raw brand in 03. Let me say something real. I got to say this before we get to anything. I've never really had a chance to talk about this time period. It blows my mind, just like now with main roster and NXT, going back to this year specifically, it still blows my mind that this was the same company, because Raw and SmackDown were completely different from look, feel, talent, how it was booked, handled. SmackDown was the show at the time, the SmackDown 6. They were firing on all cylinders. On the other hand, you've got nostalgia, nitro, bullshit, everything bad going on. It's like, how can this be the same company? How? You've got Test feuding with Scott Steiner. You turn around, you've got Edge and Kurt Angle in hair match. It's incredible, the difference in this time, Matt.
Yeah, it is. And so much talent, There was so much talent. And not just on SmackDown. There was talent on Raw. It just never really got a chance to shine above Triple H and Kevin Nash and Goldberg. Once they brought Goldberg into Raw, the younger talent weren't going to get the chance to shine. But you're right, SmackDown stood head and tails above Raw at this time. But what happened, Travis? Can I just say, how did we go from so much wonderful, prospective talent in 2003 to 2004, the slump?
By 2004, by this time next year, 2004, they had to make a gimmick, even though the guy made it himself, but their main gimmick that got over the time was Eugene, a borderline retarded character. With all the talent you had in 2002 when all this influx finally hit. And I get it, Goldberg was a top guy at this time, but he was nowhere advertised on this card or book, Matt.
No, he wasn't. And you're forgetting that the 2004 main events we got, Brock Lesnar versus Hardcore Holly for the WWE title, please.
Yeah, we're not totally saying SmackDown was perfect. They declined for sure a year from now with Hardcore Holly,
Rene Dupree.
But this was still, SmackDown at this time was still firing on a cylinder. It's just crazy to think Booker T was such an over tag team, but on the other end you have literal world's greatest tag team and just good stuff, Brock, and just tremendous.
Yeah.
I wish this was a SmackDown pay-per-view we're reviewing, but it's not. But what were the dark matches for the show, Matt?
2 dark matches. First one was Maven versus Chris Eckstein, who was a German, just a German indie guy who they brought in. Maven won. And the Hurricane versus Lance Storm.
Wow. Was this Lance Storm doing the dancing gimmick at the time?
You wish.
I do wish. And also shout out to our buddy Logan from Feature Entertainment. Couldn't help it. I heard the word Maven. Did Maven get the win, you say?
Yes, Maven won.
Was he a heel by then?
No, Maven was nothing in 2003. He was still a babyface, but he was going nowhere. He would go on after this to feud, not to feud, sorry. He would have like a few matches with Christopher Nowinski, obviously stemming from their Tough Enough days, and then Maven would just sort of drop off the map for a while until that awful heel gimmick he was given.
I feel like his biggest match, wasn't he, besides the Undertaker spot in the Rumble, but actual match, wasn't he on a Survivor Series team with Randy Orton on his team when Orton was doing that babyface run?
Yeah, I believe he was. And do you know what, the last I remember of Maven, because I've tried to blot it out,
Sorry, Logan.
Sorry, Logan, he's not winning any world titles here. Is New Year's Revolution 2005. And I don't even remember who he fought, what he did. I just remember him coming out in maybe green tights, I think. But do you know what? Who cares about Maven?
Yeah, let's move the train on from the Maven phenomenon. The other end, it was Hurricane and Lance Storm. Any 2 cents on this?
No, it was just a standard velocity match.
Yeah, it really was. Nothing to say, really. I haven't even seen it, and I can imagine it in my head, like Sunday Night Heat or Velocity. The show kicked off, though, Matt. Fireworks, Pyro, Jim Ross, Jerry Lawler welcoming us from Newcastle, lovely Newcastle. Insurrection with the... You talk about the sets one more time. This time period from, like, I want to say Backlash 02, when they had, like, the swinging guillotines, through like 04 was probably my favorite time for that company. Just the building of what the designs turned out to be. Just so much thought went into them at that time.
Yeah, and they made the shows sometimes. You know, to see a nicely designed set, it was like, this distinguishes it from Raw or SmackDown Weekly, as where now it's just, the Raw or SmackDown sets with a different logo on them.
I think one that stood out too at this time was the SummerSlam one they'd introduced, where it was like an almost full. It was like a half circle Titantron. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I enjoyed that. It was really cool. Shout out to the stage designers going on.
Which you use for Hibiki Pro, do you not?
That's actually Pull the Curtain Back Judgment Day 06 one. It's a smaller version of it though. So you're on the right track. You're on the right track. Your heart's in the right place. What did the show Insurrection 03 kick off though with, Matt?
We kicked off with the Women's Championship match. Champion Jazz versus Trish Stratus. And, what can you say about Jazz? This feud, actually, Travis, before we start on Jazz, had been going for a year. This started in May 2020.
She was in a triple threat match a year before at WrestleMania with Lita and Trish, correct? And it started from there, I want to say.
What I've got is she tore her ACL and lost the title to Trish in May 2002. She returned in January 2003 and sort of got involved in the Trish-Victoria feud. And at WrestleMania 19, she fought Trish and Victoria in a triple threat match, but didn't beat Trish for the title until Backlash.
Wow, I had no clue they had like a Flair Steamboat length of a run. And look back, they really did. They gave these two women. I mean, but what was the division? It wasn't as rounded as today. And I know people can complain about Jazz and stuff. And we got some nitpicky stuff. But I will say, at least from our last Insurrection show, we are ages beyond where we came from reviewing with the women's division. Last go round, Matt. My God, it's already 180.
It is. And this was a proper match. It was a proper knockdown, drag-out brawl, right until the very end, at least.
They were finally starting to give the women's title matches a little bit of, just, you know what I'm trying to say. And it's like, of course, the work rate, it had more, it's not as refined as it is now. It's not as, quote, indie, but it was more rough around the edges. Trish, it was more brawl, like you said. Jazz, I wouldn't want to fight Jazz. Jazz probably beat my ass. Tough as nails.
Do you remember the Survivor Series hardcore match, Trish and Victoria?
I do. That match doesn't get talked about enough, actually.
that was a brilliant match, and and also credit to WWE for that, for letting two women who just go out and smash each other with whatever they want. And Trish, can I just say, got the shit beat out of her in that match.
That match is what Bayley and Alexa should have been, like last year when they had their. And I feel like if that match would have taken place in the modern era, it could talked about a lot more. Unfortunately for them, it took place in an era where that kind of match happened all the time, so it kind of blended in.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, it did.
This match was pretty much every match I'd seen these two have before. Nothing really stood out that was too botchy or too spectacular, Matt, honestly.
No, I mean, Trish looked good, but then Jazz was very clunky in this. She was very clunky. She botched spots. Looked bad. It looked bad, but my opinion is Jazz is a trash bag.
Yeah, I just felt like I was watching a Jazz match, I guess, with the botches. That's why they didn't stand out. She wasn't the greatest worker. I mean, she started in ECW as like a valet for Just Incredible. She'd only get shots in like China would in like 97. But this time as a full-time wrestler, you could see that she still had some work to do, quite frankly. And she wasn't ready for the position she was in my opinion.
No, she didn't. Her image was China-esque, wasn't it, really? A woman who looked very masculine. And can I just say, like, I know this isn't probably a nice thing to say, but I was jotting down notes when Jazz came out, and despite her music, I just took a fleeting look at the telly and I wrote down Booker T. Like, that's how masculine she looked to me. And I had to cross out Booker T and put in Jazz.
Maybe Orlando Jordan, too, I could see, when he was in TNA. God. If anything, it feels like they always have to have, ever since China, that, because from this we'd go to Beth Phoenix. Now, of course, we have Nia Jax. They always have to have that Amazonish type woman, which is, I enjoy that. But I think out of all those women I just named, Jazz is probably my least favorite. And I'm not a fan of Nia Jax at all, but I would probably say I still at least enjoy Nia more than Jazz in that role.
Yeah. And I don't blame you. Jazz was... She was hired on her looks, let's be honest, and her physique more than her wrestling ability. And I know there's a lot of Jazz fans out there, I've heard a lot about Jazz on Twitter, but really, she wasn't as good as people make her out to be.
We may be the first podcast in the history of podcasts, too, by the way, that say that Jazz was hired for her looks. But, it's things...
You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
She was no Trish Stratus.
We'll class it up a little bit and not be total dicks. Did this take us to the nice... It was really good, actually, the Freddie Blassie tribute, right, Matt?
It was, yeah. Jazz retained the title.
Oh, yeah, by the way, that was the result.
In that match.
We forgot.
Yeah. Can I just say, Victoria came down to distract the referee, and that was her entire workload for the night. just that's what they paid her for, just to run down to the ring.
Did she... At this time, she had ditched Stevie Richards, right?
No, not yet.
I enjoyed that pairing. I didn't hate it.
In fact, we're going to get into that later when we get into the Scott Steiner Test feud, because Test had a lot to do with that. But we'll get to that later. So yeah, Teddy Long got in the ring, posted Trish Stratus, and Jazz pinned it. Flat ending, Travis. A very flat ending for me.
Yeah, it was the match. The whole thing in general, I think that's the best word to sum it up, was flat. We've seen them do better.
It was, but I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say that WWE didn't really know how to use Trish properly as a face for a time, because they'd give us some stupid angles before and after this, like the bit with Eric Bischoff on Raw when she fought Eric Bischoff for a title shot, and if she lost, she had to spend the night with him.
Yeah. Ugh, God.
It's just like, you could have booked Trish so much better than this, And I know they wanted the pretty girl next door against the big, the masculine wrecking machine, blah de blah. But
she at least had come a long way from like a year and a half before, from barking like a dog for Vince McMahon.
Yeah, so that is true. It's a step up, but imagine how much better this would have been if they'd just thrown Victoria in as a third participant.
I still think to this day, it's one of all the, people say fantasy bookings and stuff. Trish in the modern era Just my God, I think she
Yeah.
just would hit a lot more. She'd get over more.
Do you know, if she can, I don't want her to, because that send off she was given at Unforgiven 2006, it's better than any full time comeback she could ever hope for.
Right.
But I think she could still go today. We saw how good she looked in the Royal Rumble. She could, and in fact, that Royal Rumble match, she'd come a long way from when we last saw her. Was it Snooki and John Morrison at WrestleMania?
There was that, but after that, she was like a guest GM on Raw, like a year after that, and she came in for like a tag match
That's
for
right.
Cena on Raw, and she even looked better in that match than she did from that. It was Snooki, I think. And who's going to look good against Snooki, man?
That is true.
Give Trish a pass on that one, man.
I will give Trish a pass on that one. But she could come back quite easily, I think. And Trish, Alexa Bliss, Trish and Bailey, Trish, Sasha Banks, Ember Moon, the possibilities. But
I'd love
again,
to see
Travis,
this version of Trish, this hard hitting. She had to adapt into this, working with Jazz all the time. You'd have to become tough as shit by the end of that run.
Yeah.
With Ember Moon. I think that those matches right now would be great.
Oh yes, I love Ember Moon. I think she's Money in the Bank winner. Sorry, carry on.
No, she's tremendous. She's tremendous. Big fan. We'll talk about Ember Moon, I'm sure, in the future. But speaking of great, Freddie Blassie, talk about Trailblazers, all the cliche stuff. He really was. He was one of the first true great heels. He's up there with the original Sheik for just that, the epitome of the, not even old school, the school of wrestling. Just never heard a bad word said about him. I never heard anybody talk bad about Freddie Blassie, really.
No, me neither. And, one of the great managers, of course, who it doesn't get talked about. You hear about Heenan, you hear about Cornette, Fuji, Paul Bearer, etc. But Freddie Blass's name is very rarely brought into that category. And yet you go back and look at some of the stuff he did with talent. He's the epitome, I think, of what a manager should have been. He made his clients, all right, storyline clients, but regardless, on screen, he made them look indomitable.
Yeah. What more? You said it perfectly. What more can you say? Rest in peace, Freddie Blassie. Even though it's from 03, but still, rest in peace. All due respect.
Yes, exactly.
Speaking of what could have been and just greatness and things that are just some of these angles we talk about in pro wrestling, why it's frustrating to be a fan. When angles write themselves, when you take in real life, it's just some of the best stuff to watch, pan out. When the baby face who deserves it gets his comeuppance. And that was what they had with Booker T at this time. When he ran into the brick wall called the Reign of Terror at WrestleMania 19, we all know the stories, we've seen the videos, the booking, the racism, with the people like you don't get to be world champion quote in the promo from Triple H to Booker T on Raw. Booker T losing clean to Triple H for the title, not coming through. People throw the word buried around all the time. He was buried in this. Losing to the pedigree. Watch so many footage of this. It took Triple H almost 30 seconds to crawl over him after one pedigree and just pin him. The match sucked at Mania after all that build-up. He should have won. He was one of the most popular acts. And this was in the Intercontinental title match with Christian, not even 2 months later, this far down the card. It's what could have been just in a nutshell right here. Just... What did Booker T do to the people backstage to just derail his push? The possibilities were endless, I feel. He could, not as mainstream, but right up there with a Rock type, to be that guy.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing Booker T did wrong, and you might disagree, our viewers might disagree, I think the only thing he did wrong was that he was a WCW guy. And, I think Vince was still nursing that fucking erection from buying WCW and shelving it. And I just don't think he was willing to put, a lifetime WCW wrestler at the top of his company. Not yet.
I think he deals with that morning wood still to this day. Every day he wakes up, his ego is just that big. He still gets off on the fact that he did that. You could say that too, or just the fact that he wasn't Triple H. Nobody not Triple H at this time was getting fucking over. Unless you're Goldberg. And then Goldberg, the fans turned on Goldberg, and that's why it just went back to Triple H, pal, because he's a safe bet, pal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say it was racism, even though there was some of it in the angle, but there was something in the locker room that someone had against Booker T. Whether it was Triple H, I mean, whether Triple H looked at Booker T and went, "I'm not dropping the title to him. He's not a friend. He's not part of my little clique." We've all heard the stories of what a selfish prick Triple H was around this time. Why else was Nash in the main event? It obviously had something to do with Triple H, but I think the Triple H of then versus the Triple H of today is a very different person. And yes, he can be held accountable for burying a lot of talent, as good as he was.
It's amazing how much a guy can change when he's not an active performer on the roster, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it is. And especially when he's got nothing to gain by keeping someone back on a roster. Because in 2003, he had everything to gain by keeping opposition back. Look more powerful, look better. But now he's got nothing to gain from that.
I've taken the Reign of Terror arguments with a grain of salt, and like I always do, I sit on the fence. I try to play devil's advocate. I've tried to also see their side of it. I think also it could have been what they tried to do with that, quote, racism promo with Booker T on Raw and all that stuff. That's that whole angle. They went for edgy. Like, they didn't really... And I think Booker T would have had to agree to that, to be in that. I think what they were going for, just like with Katie Vick, they were still trying to shock people at a time where they had just come off that high from the Attitude Era to the point where they were numb. You couldn't shock fans anymore. It had to go back to wrestling, which is why it's progressed to what we have now. It's where the more the in-ring talks. Like, now everyone cringes at any storyline on Raw, it feels like, because A, it's a storyline, and people don't want storylines now. The modern fan would rather just see good wrestling, but at this time, they were coming off that high where that's all they knew was to just feed them storylines. They were learning how to adapt to a changing audience.
Yeah. I mean, you can't say more than that, You've pretty much hit it on the head. If we can just take this back a bit to the possibilities with Booker T, what could you have done with him? I mean, like, the possibilities were endless.
I agree. Completely agree with that sentiment. You could have kept the feud going with Triple H. It would have worked.
Yeah, it would have worked.
I wouldn't have argued Triple H retaining as long as those guys had it back and forth. But when you shoehorn in a guy like Goldberg who waited his contract out, oh, by the way, this timing sucks for a guy like Booker T in that situation. Because they're going with Goldberg when he's available. The second he became available in 2003, they snatched him up. You're on Raw, pal.
Do you think this might have been just circumstance? Like, had Goldberg not been on the roster, had they never been able to get his signature on that contract, not so long after this, Triple H would injure himself.
He'd wear the biker shorts for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons he dropped the title to Goldberg. Yeah, because he couldn't perform for a while.
I think that
had Goldberg not been there,
I think that is a huge part of it. Honestly, that is it. That is 100% a huge part of just timing, circumstances. Had Goldberg not been brought on, and look what happened to a guy like Jericho. Also, talk about push to the back. Jesus Christ. Even on this show, it seems like all they gave him was just a little segment. It's a lot more than he was doing on actual TV. It felt like, because he was just in a tag team with Christian at this time, doing nothing.
Yeah.
And he had a little feud with Goldberg here, but what happened? Come on.
Nothing. It was shit. That feud with Goldberg was awful.
And the fans cheered the shit out of Chris Jericho at Bad Blood a few weeks later. Yes. They turned on Goldberg. That was the match, I feel like, that's it. The fans are going to turn. And that, lo and behold, what happened. Let's not get too pissy and ahead of ourselves. We got plenty to talk about with that, though, Matt. Finally, let's cover this IC title match with a gimmick I actually liked on Raw at the time, this brand new heel Christian, Matt.
Yes, exactly. Main event Christian for me. Once he cut off the locks, once he, took off that vest thing he was wearing and just basically got down to boots, tights, wrestling. This could have been a main event Christian. I wouldn't have objected, Travis, had this been for the World Heavyweight Championship in 2003. But, IC title feud, fine, went way too long. This went way, way too long. 15 and a half minutes. I know it wasn't bad, but, partway through, I began to believe that they were just walking through the motions. It just felt a bit. This is here to fill the time match for me.
Another little, how you say, ingredient in the recipe right here on the disaster that was the Booker T souffle at the time was the booking. They took the Intercontinental title away at this time for like a year. They had just brought it back at Judgment Day. There was a Battle Royal. Christian won it by screwing over Booker T, I think, in the end. And I can't remember the exact booking, but it was something where Booker T came out looking like a fucking idiot and forgot rules apparently, and Christian screwed him over because he on something. But still, that didn't help Booker look any, stronger as a babyface either. But that's how that we came to Christian actually getting this belt.
Yeah, it is. And can I just say, WWE didn't do Booker T any favours either with the constant prison jokes they gave Jerry Lawler carte blanche to just spout off on a whim.
It was definite overkill, but I think had they been giving him those in smaller doses, Booker T handled right in the world title, it could have worked.
Do you know what? If they'd have pushed that as a, just a bitter commentator talking against. Oh, I'm on form tonight, aren't I? Talking against somebody who used to be a criminal, and then had that underdog story come from prison to the top of the wrestling mountain. That could have made Booker T a star in 2003.
So many things could have made him a star than what they did. I mean, as much of a guilty pleasure as Goldust and Booker T was, and yes, they were extremely over. Goldust as a singles on this show was over, but anything.
Yeah, just give us something. But, it wasn't to be. And, I mean, if we sat here, Travis, and looked at what could have been, this would be a 3-day podcast.
Oh, for sure. And you know what they did give us, though, for Booker T in this? Was a hell of a lot of time for this match, Matt. Jesus. God, was this the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12? Because that's what it felt like.
It did feel like it. 15 and a half minutes, I think, this clocked in at the end. And
it felt like so much.
Honestly,
like
I don't see what they did with this time, Travis. You tell me what they did with these 15 minutes? Like, pick out a highlight.
There was, I mean, each guy I think got his signature things in at the time. They told a match. They didn't kill it. They weren't shitting the bed. It was the pacing and just I don't want to say they phoned it in. But just the atmosphere, how it was booked in the first place, I kind of made it lackluster because I think even the fans, the casual fans, even thought Booker T deserved better than this title.
Yeah. And you won't say it, but I will. I think they phoned it in. I think they just had Judgment Day. I think they were going on to something about blood. I think this was phoned in. Honestly, I'd have complained, Travis, had this been on Raw at this length and with the lack of content, because there were a lot of rest holds. Yes, there was a spinner Rooney, which never made sense to me in the middle of a fucking match. He's down, cover him. Don't
Matt
spin on
hates
your ass
spinner
in the
Rooney.
middle of the ring for 2 minutes.
We got it out of him.
What was the point of that move? Please, someone tell me. Tweet me what the point of that move was. Because
it had the same purpose as the worm, just something to get a cheap pop from the crowd that made no sense in a real fight to do.
Do you know what? At least the worm had something at the end of it. All right, it was a weak chop that wouldn't have took your granny down, but the worm had something at the end of it. It was like Booker T just broke off from every match he was wrestling just to give the fans a little sideshow. It made no sense at all. Just cut it out.
Is it equivalent to like the Hogan pose after Hogan won a match? It's like there's no purpose for the posing. It's over, so do it.
Exactly. Just that was to send fans home happy. Like, here's a picture opportunity. I wouldn't have complained about the spinner Rooney if it had been like a post-match celebration.
Sometimes he did it post-match. He waited. But more times than not, you're right. He was like in the middle of the match out of nowhere. It's like, throw him a top hat and a cane, and he's giving him the stage like, well, dun 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 dun. And then he's back to the match. You're right, too. Shame on you, Booker T. You would have the shit beat out of you during most of your matches, and somehow magically you could just breakdance. Matt got me to hate the spinner Rooney this week. You converted me.
He'd have probably won half the matches he lost if this had been real life, had he not done the spinner Rooney.
See you guys, the lesson learned this week is don't be a showboat.
Yeah, don't piss about when victory's in your sights. Lesson 1.
Tortoise in the hair.
There you go.
Booker T is the tortoise. Oh no, he's the hare. Sorry, I don't know where the fuck we're at. This match was way too much time. Obviously, Christian getting the win here. What was the official outcome and result of this?
The official outcome, from what I could see, was a fuck up, Travis, because Christian pinned Booker T, rolled him up, then Christian put a hand on the rope. The referee counted to 2. His hand never hit the mat for 3. Booker T kicked out, and the ref gave it to Christian. I don't know whether the wrestlers fucked up or the referee fucked up, but someone fucked up, and the end of the match suffered as a result.
Maybe he's related to the ref that we saw on Raw this week when Elias DDT'd Seth Rollins on a chair in front of the ref, looking right at it, and the ref slid the chair out himself right after.
Yeah. or the referee from last week's Insurrection, where Farouk and Bradshaw just beat the shit out of Road Dogg, and he just sent him back to the locker room without disqualifying him.
Sidebar on this real quick, because it's something we never talk about. At this time, too, we saw a drastic decline in quality of WWE officials. We had gone from Hebner's and Nick Patrick's. Mike Chioda's always been there, but he became, quote, senior official. But just these no-name guys they always brought in at this time. Who was the ref that literally got fired for the Mark Henry botch on Raw with Matt Hardy? Just stuff like that all the time. You never saw that back in any promotion. The referees, Tommy Young for NWA, Earl Hebner, all those guys I've named, they were the best at what they did for a reason. Were in the top companies because they never fucked up. Brian Hildebrand, Mark Curtis, another good one.
Yep. These referees, just, I don't know. Like, I've got no words to describe how bad some of them were.
They just round them up at like the local Shell station in the city, and be like, "Here's a shirt, pal. Throw it on."
Yeah.
Ugh, it feels like it.
The local hospital. Anyone want a job? Yeah, here's a shirt in the ring.
Christian obviously retaining the IC title. Both these guys would go on to pretty much be squandered until they went to TNA. Booker T would get one world title win in the company as King Booker, but other than that,
he would actually defeat Christian for the Intercontinental title on Raw, literally a month later, a month after this.
Who did he drop it to at this time? I completely forget.
He dropped it back to Christian.
Okay.
It was a house show, and he had to because he sustained an injury during the house show, and they had no choice but to put it back on Christian.
At least it wasn't Test. Thank God.
Were you, Travis? I've been dying to ask this all week. Were you a testicle? And moving on.
Where did that take us to next at Insurrection?
That took us to a nice little Austin Teddy Long meeting backstage, which it was fine. It was what you'd expect it to be. Austin was good. And the main point of this was just to add Teddy Long and Spike Dudley to the Dudleys versus Rodney Mack and Christopher Nowinski match later on. That was it. That was the
most fans, even like ones that watch a lot of WWE at this time, are unaware Teddy Long actually came back as his NWA role as a manager after being a referee in WWF for a couple of years before this.
Yes, and do you know what? Best role for him because charismatic little fucker, wasn't he? Like, he's like the granddad you want.
Sorry.
He's like the granddad you want at a wedding or a party. Yeah, he'll get up on the dance floor. He'll throw some moves. He'll have a good time.
Matt confirmed it, guys. Teddy Long is that drunk uncle you want to hang out with, as opposed to the uptight asshole uncle you have. Let me holla at you, Matt. Oh boy.
Oh my God.
He's managing Rodney Mack and Chris Nowinski in this, but that's a hell of a step up even from Norman the Lunatic he managed in NWA though, at least.
Yes,
when he held the keys to the asylum. Oh my God, that was awful. Shame on you, Jim Hurd, you fucking piece of shit. Anyway, let's talk about this real quick. I miss Austin as a GM. I think he was so entertaining in this. But by the end of it, I think the swan song was him reffing the match with Brock and all that stuff, and then him eventually being fired in storyline like a year later.
Yeah. I mean, I've got all that down for like the later highlight reel that we've got. But yeah, the best role for him after that invasion debacle and everything that he lost in 2002 character-wise, like this gave him it all back.
You also feel like him therapy-wise, too, as a person at the time. He was probably trying not to focus on his career just ending. So he always looked like he was having fun, and it took his mind off of just his career having to wind down because of his neck.
Yeah. Yeah, and do you know what? He didn't have to worry. Let's be honest. He did pretty well after walking away from the ring.
He was already a made man by then.
Yeah,
That always helps
yeah,
too.
It was.
Where are we at
And
now?
none of this. I might come back for one last match. Bullshit. Sure, Michaels. Thank you very much. Stay away from the ring.
That's right. That's right. We failed to mention that earlier. We'll have some more news on that for next week.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. That took us, Travis, to tag team title action. I'll call it action. Tag team title piss break. Kane and RVD versus La Resistance.
I'm going to shock a lot of people. One of my guilty pleasure teams of all time has always been Rob Van Dam and Kane. There was something about them, and I hate throwing together teams, guys, but this was always one of my favorites. It's up there with X-Pac and Kane. There's something about Kane and a smaller, high-flying guy that just did it for me, I guess.
I thought you were going to start this segment off by saying La Resistance were one of your guilty pleasures. I'm so glad you didn't come out with that.
I'm not completely insane and out of my mind yet.
But I agree with you. You know, Kane was, and this was a Kane before he discovered the keys to the pie factory. You know, this was a slim down Kane who could still move when he wanted to.
The keys to the pie factory. Are they shepherd's pie since it's Union Smack, Matt, on top of it?
Do you know what? Shepherd's pies, apple pies, beef pies, ale pies.
Nobody
whatever.
beats Kane in a shepherd's pie eating contest, apparently.
Exactly.
No, I completely agree with what you said. This was also, man, they teased it talking about the week before on Raw, whatever. This was that time right before Kane would unmask and turn on Rob Van Dam and go that completely insane Kane. Yeah, I'm with that too. They were building up Kane again. It felt like at this time, and stuff with Austin getting him to be more intense. I really liked that. I really did, and it made no sense for him to turn heel out of nowhere out of this.
Exactly. I liked it up to that point. Like, I mean, we can forget this match. Let's forget this match and just say Kane and RVD won. It was a crap match.
And
Slow,
you guys
rubbish.
chanted, "We want Frenchies," and that was the highlight, basically. Because La Resistance were two young guys, 19 and 20 years old. Sylvain Grandet, Rene Dupree, had no business being on television yet. They needed to be an OVW somewhere else.
Yes, they did. They needed to be anywhere other than a main WWE spotlight and this was Newcastle. Like, I don't know whether WWE looked at the city before they booked the event here, but you know, Newcastle is a very volatile city. And I'll take back what I said at the top of the show. It's not a horrible town. It is a very nice town. There are some questionable people that live in it. Let's put it that way. But you know, the "We Hate Frenchies" chant, standard Newcastle crowd who've had a few pints.
Quite
a few pints. Where were we? Oh,
La Resistance, real quick. One last thought on them because I'd like to bring up that it's too much too soon, and I think Rene Dupree's even come out and said that in a lot of shoot interviews now because he had a lot of drug addictions from just springboarding from his time in the company, just the party lifestyle, and I feel like if they hadn't been shoehorned in, unfortunately, he wouldn't have had his demons. I think too. So some nasty.
I agree with that.
You know.
Yeah. Let people just mature at their own pace, you know. But then this was WWE. They're well known for, pushing people up before they're ready.
Eventually, we see Rob Conway come in too as the French sympathizer. Hey, look at me. Who would think he would be NWA World's Champion years later and pretty decent at it?
Yeah. Well, there you go. Just proves that WWE holds some people back when they've actually got more to give. I thought Rob Conway would have been better as a Rick Martel in the Rene Dupree role, as sort of a mid-card Rick Martel role that Rene Dupree finally got. But what do we know, Travis? We're only lifelong fans.
Yeah, exactly.
The Kane heel turn. How fucking stupid of a storyline was that? Like, not only did they give away a massive moment in history, this was a man who'd been there 6 years by this point, coming up to 6 years, always been masked. He's going to take his mask off. Do it on pay-per-view, not on Raw. 1. And then 2, just, rips the mask off and suddenly evil. Like the mask's been keeping back his urge to tear someone's head off.
And we've seen
Just
him go through so many wars for years, like Inferno matches. But all it took was Steve Austin smacking him, and that's why he took his mask off.
it was terrible. Honestly, I know a lot of people will have this as a fond memory of their childhood or growing up as a fan. It was terrible. Like the story of it was awful.
And the only payoff was
Just
him losing to Taker at WrestleMania 20 a year later. And then it was nothing. Matches with Shane McMahon and just dumb.
without that mask, honestly, I know he had 2010, I think it was, etc. But without that mask, I think Kane lost a lot of interest, because a lot of the interest, for me and for a lot of people I know, was what is behind that mask.
Exactly. And what did we get? We got shoe polish and just a half of a haircut at first before he came back with the towel, like Taz.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I remember. Do you know what? I remember my first reaction to seeing Kane unmasked. For years, it had been, what's under that mask? And when he took it off, it was, oh, it's Isaac Yankem. Lovely.
Fake Diesel. Where are we at now on Insurrection? Let's pick up the spirits.
We are at Al Snow Goldust interview. Only thing I've got to say about this, Travis, is Al Snow was desperately hanging on to a paycheck. That was Al Snow's role in 2003. And Goldust had developed that fucking terrible stutter Tourette's thing.
Comedy character.
Yeah. Was he not thrown into an electric wall by Evolution?
Yes. It was like stage equipment, I think, or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. I've not seen it since it aired, but I remember it was something like that. And he suddenly developed stutter and Tourette's. And that was Goldust's role in 2003. But do you know what, Travis? It was still better than 7.
I mean, and Black Rain, and so many things. But as soon as they separated him from Booker T at this time, he was done. He was done. He needed Booker T.
He was. Booker T made him relevant. When they split, he was a lower card wrestler.
Sure was.
I don't like Dustin Rhodes. He turned out to be a real prick in reality. But do you know what? He was still like a good wrestler,
There you have it.
Hey, Dustin, you're a prick. Sorry.
No, I didn't know you thought it was a prick, so I'm learning things too this week. See?
He blocked me on Twitter.
Why?
For just because last year, Travis, it's literally before we started using Smack, actually, I got involved in a Twitter argument about Dustin Rhodes, where I simply said that in 2017 it was, he doesn't really belong anywhere near a ring when there's wrestlers, waiting for a spot like that. And he got tagged in the tweet, and he called me a prick.
He wasn't a happy Goldust, was he?
He wasn't a happy Goldust. I got called a prick. I called him a disappointment. He blocked me. And that was that.
Well, that was that. I mean, wow.
So I've been called a prick by Goldust. I can die a happy man.
Well, his career died a happy death. We can go ahead and review Rico versus Goldust real quick, so we don't have to get back to this instead of talking about it anyway. It was a match you would see on a house show, and it was boring, and Goldust won with the power slam. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It's fair to say this was the second piss break in a row on the show, and Goldust would very soon dissipate after this. He'd have that tag team with Lance Storm in August. Wasn't the thrill seekers, we have to say. And then he was meant to be the mastermind behind them mysterious little messages to Booker T, if you remember that angle. But it was dropped. It was dropped like a hot shit after Dustin's contract wasn't renewed in December.
Yeah.
And that's that. That was the end of Goldust till whenever he came back. I don't know. I've not bothered, and I don't like him. But can I just say, Rico, I'd like to send him my best wishes, even though he probably doesn't listen to this, because he's made a life for himself outside of wrestling. He's a sergeant inspector for the Nevada Taxicab Authority, but he's been suffering from some health problems and some heart problems and concussion problems from his wrestling days. So, get well soon, Rico. You weren't as bad as people make out.
Rico Constantino is a guy who was completely wasted, who has an amazing real life story. I've heard tons of stuff about him being started as a Las Vegas police officer, was stabbed 3 times on duty, was on American Gladiators and made it to like the finals of a tournament. You can go back, the mullet's in full force. He was great. I've watched. I have like a couple OVW DVDs, and I've seen. He was really good, man.
Yeah, great physique, great athlete, and can I just say, brilliant theme tune. Even though it was stole from Billy and Chuck.
Oh yeah.
The only thing I really liked about Billy and Chuck, loved that theme tune.
It's
Found
one
myself
of the
listening to it on YouTube last night.
to prepare for this. It's one of those few feel good themes from this time period too. They're like, oh,
Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah, so it's like a hot bath. You can just sink into it and go, oh.
Exactly. Ugh, I got horrible images now of just men listening to that in the bathtub. Is it time for what?
Yes, it is time for. I'm going to say this was the best thing about the entire night, even though there were some decent matches. Highlight reel: Chris Jericho with guest Eric Bischoff, and inevitably Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I'm pretty sure this is on the Because Stone Cold Said So DVD, or the Jericho DVD was one of them as extras, this whole segment too, because I've seen it before this. I know I have.
Yeah. You might be right. I don't think I have that DVD.
You know what?
I have a few Austin DVDs. I've got one Jericho box set, but I haven't watched them for ages. So you might be right.
Let's talk about the setup of this particular highlight reel. Chris Jericho kicking it off, coming out, cutting good heel promo, complaining about the 2 bar stools and the shitty rug that they give him, which I gotta agree. What the fuck?
No expense spared. Come on, Travis. They'd spent all the money on the set. They couldn't afford the, what's he call it? The Geritron.
The hot shit
Green
brand
as
new
well.
2003 plasma TV at the time.
Maybe they just didn't want to take it into Newcastle because it had got stolen.
Ooh, look at that.
Like,
Brilliant.
We're not taking that to Newcastle. We'll never see it again.
Jericho not as good as a heel as Matt right now, but nonetheless, good heel work. Bringing out probably the best heel in the entire company at the time, the man everyone hated to see. Talk about feel-good themes, Matt.
Yes.
And
I'm better than
Missed
ever.
that goddamn theme music too. Speaking of theme.
Do you know what? I never thought I'd say this, but in today's current product, I miss Eric Bischoff.
I do too. At the time, it was too much, but now we sorely need someone with that no likable personality type heel. Because you got that with Stephanie McMahon, but the thing that sucks about Stephanie McMahon, that's the shitty real heel who's actually helping run the company, so that's just depressing. I want a character like Bischoff.
Yeah,
you're right.
And Eric Bischoff never actually verbally buried talent without taking it back. You know?
Yeah.
Unlike Stephanie does. So
thrown in the trash. Stephanie was thrown in like chocolate pudding. That just sums up each right there as how they're viewed. But this segment obviously interrupted by the other co-GM at the time, Steve Austin, and what stood out to me was
Can I just say, Travis, before that, Eric Bischoff, stunningly good heel work. Like we talked about Vince McMahon last week, his promo to the UK crowd. I'm going to go out there and say Eric Bischoff's was better.
I agree. I agree, taking some cheap shots at the crowd about dental work, just good stuff here.
Yeah. What was it he said? Hang on, I've got it written down here. They got rid of mad cow disease, but what about fat cow disease? Brilliant.
He was like, look at that guy right there in the front row. I love when heels would point out specific fans, too. Because it was always like, it made the moment feel more tense, like, oh.
Like the Dudley Boyz at Heatwave.
Oh,
what
nothing tops that.
Moment that was.
We got a mother who taught her daughter how to suck dicks in the front row. Will always be in my little 14-year-old brain looking back.
So,
what can you say? Interrupted by Austin, though, this co-GM stuff at the time. These two always played well off of each other. What stood out to me was Chris Jericho grabbing the mic and say, if you want to see Chris Jericho do something, give me a do-wah diddy-diddy-dum diddy-do. That was fun. And the crowd literally chanted that back, verbatim.
Yeah. This was a brilliant example of how to get yourself over without wrestling. I think this could probably be shown in the Performance Center as, promo 101. Austin's brilliant, Bischoff's brilliant, Jericho's brilliant, the crowd are brilliant. This goes to show what can happen with a crowd when they're invested in what you've got to say, not just the normal generic, I'm going to beat you at Backlash, blah, blah, blah promo.
Austin's still getting insane reactions at the time too, and that's
Yes.
that's not even our typical. You guys were starved in the U.S. Also, he was still getting as a GM, still insanely over. And we can't really do this segment justice, guys, in describing it. If anything on the show, check this out. Watch it for yourselves. It's available on the network right now, just like our shirt on Big Cartel. Cheap plug. Like what it did.
And Austin counting to 20 beers that he'd had. That's a starter in Newcastle.
Yes,
If you've not drunk 20 beers by 8:30 p.m., you're labelled as gay in Newcastle. Sorry,
God.
Newcastle. Love you.
Newcastle are like the rednecks of England. Then is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, we've got some Twitter hate coming our way. That led us to Ric Flair and Triple H backstage, and another cheap shot at Newcastle because Ric Flair says, "No one in Newcastle knows what a street fight is. Really, go out on a Friday night, then come back to me, Rick."
Flair obviously never gets off the plane or the hotel when he's in Newcastle. Then is what you're saying.
Yes. There's a street fight every 10 minutes in Newcastle. And come on, Newcastle, you know it's true. You can't hate me for that.
William Regal. Sorry. I just picture William Regal when I hear street fights in England on the streets because of how they've always built him up over the years. He started as a brawler at 15.
Yeah, I read that. Bare knuckle boxing in Blackpool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Just typical Reign of Terror promo here, Matt.
Yes. Yeah, it was building... I'll say building Triple H up, but he was more mad than anything else. Mad that he had to lower himself in 2003 to perform in England. Let's be honest, that's how it came off to be.
Well, also why I was actually mad here in the Austin segment. Austin announced that the main event with Kevin Nash would now be a street fight, like you said, and this didn't make Triple H happy. And doing the typical grunts and poop faces and just stuff Triple H does silly when he's angry at this time.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about that segment. Was it Dudley Boyz after this?
It was 6-man tag. Dudley's with Spike versus, and I'm sure they refer to themselves as Thuggin' and Bugging Militant. I'm sure that was the name of their group. Rodney Mack, Christopher Nowinski, and Teddy Long.
There's so much to say about so many guys in this match. We'll do our best to keep it short but sweet, I guess. For one, Chris Nowinski, another guy, he had potential out the ass, but no business being rushed in that fast.
Yeah, I agree. Like Maven. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like Maven, but he had potential. You know, if he'd have undergone another 2 years worth of heavy training, maybe. You know, maybe, but no.
The biggest difference then and now is they'd never nourished their talent then. They never did. They never had an appetizer before the meal. They just wanted to dig into the meal. And
exactly. Can you imagine Maven and Nowinski in NXT now if they were to have come up?
I think Nowinski now would be one of the biggest heels and best in the business.
I can't disagree with that. He had the look, he had the smirk, he had the body and the build. It just came at the wrong time for him.
Yep.
And he'd just come off of a feud with Scott Steiner.
Yeah. Who was poison. He was about the equivalent of Bray Wyatt being booked against back then. It just does nothing good for your career. Also, teaming with a guy I never got, quite frankly. I know you never got it either. Rodney Mack. I just never got what they saw.
No, I never liked him. He was as big a trash as his wife. And sorry, we're not being disrespectful to people here. It's true. Like Rodney Mack had ECW talent written all over him.
Oh yeah, totally. I can totally see him in a promotion like that, seedy, grittier, as opposed to just under those lighting setups or what. He just didn't. It just never translated well for me.
No, it didn't. And I don't think anyone lost any sleep when they got rid of him and Jazz in 2004.
I think anybody even knew or cared on the other end. Teddy Long also wrestling in this match in an Insurrection t-shirt and Adidas track pants. Typical. I think he did exactly what he was supposed to do in this match. Nothing. He was supposed to wrestle like a man. Teddy Long coming from the old school, knowing that cornet style. On the other end, though, Matt, speaking of a lot to say, the Dudley Boyz at this time. Let's get into it.
Yeah, well, I said this to you off air. Like, What did they do in 2003? And for people listening, I tried to cast my mind back that far. I did it with everybody else on the show, and I could not think of one thing the Dudley Boyz did in 2003. Not one, apart from flounder.
They did absolutely nothing. They both flopped as singles in 02 with Reverend Devon and just Happy Bubba Ray Dudley, and then they had no
testify.
they had no choice but to put them back together by Survivor Series 02. And the crowd at MSG that night, when they came back, they went insane. When they first came back, and yes, they would win the tag team titles from La Resistance and a couple other times, but still they always felt, at even this early in their career, a nostalgia act in the company for me.
Yeah, agreed. There was nothing to do with them. You killed Devon's character by giving him that Reverend Devon shit and giving him Batista as a right hand man. Bubba Ray Dudley never found it in singles competition. I think he had a few high profile matches with Triple H on Raw. I seem to remember. Casting my mind back now, but
yeah,
why split them up? Why split them up in the first place? You split them up. You've killed them both off. Now you're going to put them back together and hope that the fans take to them. Not going to work. So, well done, Vince. You killed the Dudley Boyz in 2002, 2003.
Well, if I had to cherry pick, the only thing I really enjoyed from this time period until the release was, speaking of the other guy with them, Spike Dudley, when he was the boss character and turned heel and he bitched around the Dudleys. That's maybe the only thing decent I enjoyed, because then they put Heyman as the GM on SmackDown and they were like his henchmen, and that sucked. And I know that's going to be in your Undertaker book, so we won't talk about that.
Concrete Crypt match, yes, that's coming. Look out for that. And don't expect anything good from it either, because I've got nothing to say good about it. And believe me, Travis, I tried. I think I sat there for like an hour trying to think of something good to say about that feud. It was the shits.
We all tried. Trust me. No, it's not just you. We all tried to take something good. Because on paper, the Dudley Boyz with the Undertaker and an angle would have been cool. Because you never.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
God forbid.
Nope, it wasn't.
This match wasn't cool either, by the way. Nothing about this was enjoyable. The only things that stood out to me were Chris Nowinski is sloppy as shit, has no chemistry with any of the guys in this match. It looked like he was irritating the piss out of Bubba Ray Dudley, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Why am I laughing? Oh my god, he was so green. He was Incredible Hulk green. It's startling to see that he'd been through tough enough. He'd obviously been through some training in OVW, and he was still this bad. And he'd stay this bad until he retired later in the month.
Yep, exactly. He never got any better because he was never really given a chance. He was given a chance to get better. As the guy you're working with too has to be willing to help you get better, and it just seemed like he was pissing off veterans every time he was in a match. And why would they want to help him? It was that cutthroat era,
Yeah, it was, and they didn't help him by then taking him from this and giving him like Maven and and Scott Steiner. You're not getting over.
I think the result coming out of it was obviously Nowinski wasn't ready. It didn't translate well, but the finish was Teddy Long getting the pin. Surprisingly.
Yeah. And that's why Teddy Long was there, let's be honest. He was added to the match so he could take the pin, and Nowinski and Mac wouldn't have to look at the lights. And you know what? That was fine with me because I had no interest in this anyway. So
there's another a Spinaroonie spot for you, though. God knows you got the Dudley Boyz' faces. You got to have a table spot. It was Nowinski looking at the lights after this, taking a 3D through the table.
Mm-hmm.
At least it wasn't a kind of table we reviewed last week. It was a normal kind of looking table, I guess.
Yeah, it was WWE table instead of English hardware shop table that will break your spine.
With your small dinners. Test and Scott Steiner, one of the greatest feuds in the history of pro wrestling, Matt, set the world afire in 2003 over the managerial services of Stacy Keibler. I loved every second of the match, the feud, the character progression, the layers it added, the organic atmosphere. The crowds were invested in these matches completely. One of my favorite times as a wrestling fan was this time, Matt.
And I'll applaud you for that, Travis, because you did all that without a hint of sarcasm. So everyone, just a really big round of applause for Travis.
Am I allowed to laugh finally?
This was not the shits. Whatever's worse than the sloppy shits.
The
This was
squirty
terrible.
shits. Like
Squirty
explosive,
shits.
projectile, fluidy diarrhea. All over your house and your walls.
Though, I will say, I would have fought tests for Stacy Keibler.
That's true. That is very true. But, you know, we got to thank this feud in a way, because if we never would have got it, we would have never got at Bad Blood, like a couple weeks later, that botch from Scott Steiner falling off the apron and going for a double axe handle. Right on his fucking face. My God. He already had Iron Sheik knees in 03. Scott Steiner had no business being full-time on any roster. That showed from his very first match in WWE. His matches with Triple H shit the bed. Thongs being exposed under his tights. Scott Steiner was a complete bust in 03, 04, anytime during this time in WWE.
Agreed. And quick question for you, Travis. How many steroids do you think he was taking a day?
See,
That
I
you-
like what
no
you
one's
did, because
gonna
we
tell me
don't got
that
Davey
body
this
was
week,
from
so
gym
let's
work.
go with Steiner. How many syringes did it take to fill up Big Papa Pump
Yeah.
this week? 6, I'm going to say.
A day or an hour? Because that body, you know,
A minute.
you'd have to be in the gym 24/7 for about a year.
And my
to even
God,
get
Jerry
near
Lawler treated his bicep pose like it was Deborah Michael showing her tits. Like when he flexed, Jerry Lawler was like, "Ah, my God!"
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Oh my God, I love doing this show.
What can you say though? Well, there's certain parts about the show I hate doing. It's sitting through matches like this.
Let's be honest. The best thing you can say about this match and this feud, it was 2000 WCW mid card. It screamed it, and that was it. Like I don't even want to go into the match, Travis, because it was shit.
This would have been the main
Yeah.
event in WCW in 2000 for the title on the 26 guys they put it on in that year. Let's be real.
Can you imagine Test as world champion?
In WCW in 2000, I could picture anybody as fucking world champion, Matt, honestly. If you want to get real about it. I could
You do. Well, they put it on David Arquette and Vince Russo, so yeah. Yeah.
Thoughts on the match, Matt? I mean, anything you want to dissect from the masterpiece that was given before?
I'd have liked to dissect the match from the entire show. It was terrible.
In my mind, in reality, in history.
Steiner won with a flatliner. Simple as. But as if that wasn't bad enough, they carried this on and on into Bad Blood, into Unforgiven, into Raw, into every fucking thing they could, because they had nothing else to do with them until Scott Steiner was finally released from the company. And this feud, Travis, from beginning to end, from when they formed as a team to when they split to when they reformed, when Scott Steiner turned heel on Stacy Keibler,
Yeah.
just under a year.
For no fucking reason, just he got tired of her.
Yep.
And now we're best buds, bros. I just realized, too, any promotion Steiner was in as a singles or whatever at this time, his finisher always had to rhyme with his last name. Frankensteiner, Steiner Recliner, Flatliner. What the fuck? Is that a thing?
Do you know what? I didn't notice that, but you're right. Absolutely right. And can I just say, Scott Steiner, what a shame. Such a talented tag team wrestler. To you know what I mean, to degenerate into such a dull, run-of-the-mill singles wrestler. Just what
Him
a waste.
as one half of the Steiners with his brother, and him as Big Papa Pump at this time. Two completely different guys all around.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, what can you say about Test? We know how it ended for him. You know, he sadly passed away 6 years later, but stuff. You know, he went on from this to the great heights of feuding with Stevie Richards on Heat, and then on to ECW when he came back.
He's actually at first treated like a top guy in ECW, but it was ECW and WWE. So for what that's worth,
that's true.
If
Heyman have had complete control over this, I think Test might have been able to eke out a little bit of star power in ECW, but as it was, again, something else that shit the bed.
If you had to rate this match, I'm curious, man. Specifically this match, what would you rate it?
What's worse than Z. Like once we've got the alphabet out the way, I think disgusting would be, you know.
You're in
And
Ahmed
that's going
Johnson
way
territory.
back. Like that's worse than the alphabet. That's like the minus of the alphabet. Now we're going into words to describe a match instead of a rating.
You're getting up
It was
there with Dino Bravo and Iron Sheik from a few weeks ago's tag team territory.
Yes. I'm giving it a -D for disgusting. There you go.
And a disgrace and despicable and all the things that start with D for this match. Avoid it at all costs. Avoid it. Anytime you guys, if you're watching a show on the network or you just picked up a cool DVD or Blu-ray that has any match of this angle, always skip it. Always skip it.
Yeah.
If for anything, Stacy Keibler's there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what can you say about Stacy Keibler? We could say plenty of things, but they'd all be disgusting and juvenile, so maybe we shouldn't.
All this has come full circle this week, Insurrection 03. There's not as much negative on this review as most weeks. We talked earlier about the plethora of talent and the squandering and the treated like WCW and the shitty booking. And for the main event of this show, I don't care if it's a throwaway show in England, whatever. Kevin Nash and Triple H, this feud at the time. Kevin Nash had just come back from tearing his quad on Raw a year later as part of the NWO. Came back as a single with weird Diesel remix music with Shawn Michaels as his best buddy again. And you see it on the thumbnail. Take the money and run, Matt. It's no better way to sum up Kevin Nash right here.
Exactly. And generic ring gear as well. No effort, no care,
Big
no
daddy.
want, no love for the industry anymore. And I'm surprised Kevin Nash could even blink in 2003 without tearing a quad.
I'm also surprised you think Kevin Nash at any point of his career had love for the industry also, which is hilarious.
You think?
I don't think he ever did. I think he loved the money that came with the industry.
Do you know what? I'm going to disagree slightly and say there was a few moments in his Diesel run where I think he genuinely cared about what he was doing, and then King Mabel happened, and I think he just thought, what the fuck am I bothering?
That's true. Not to mention King Mabel fucked his back up for like the rest of his career with that spot Nash has talked about in the match, where like he just sits on him.
How many men did Mabel injure? Undertaker,
Good God.
Nash. Did he not injure Bulldog at one point?
That's a 2-hour show right there. All the guys, just Mabel on the thumbnail and like body bags around him. God.
R.I.P. Kevin Nash career. R.I.
Oh, and by the way, R.I.P. Mabel, who actually died.
Yeah.
Speaking of actually died, this was the main event, and this made the pay-per-view die a slow, miserable death for me.
Yeah. I mean, both Triple H and Kevin Nash died out there in the ring, didn't they? Let's be honest. And I think this was one of the matches and one of the decisions, like, along with to put Kevin Nash or men of his stature or lack of in the main event during this time on Raw that sort of helped towards the decline of the World Heavyweight Championship, even though it was less than a year old at this point.
And another guy involved a lot.
This is not the WCW Championship. Sorry, it's not fuck all to do with it. Same design, that's it. Yeah. It pisses me off, Travis, when people go, "Oh, but it's a continuation of the." No, it's not. It's not. I don't care what Wikipedia says either. It's not.
Yeah, anyone who thinks that it's different booking styles, it's just different all around. Completely. Yeah. It's just the same belt.
Exact same design with WWE on it. That's it. There's no other history there with it. It started in September 2002. Sorry, when it was awarded to Triple H. Exactly.
Another guy involved in this match who was, it's safe to say, for its time, the Seth Rollins of Monday Night Raw was Mr. Reliable Shawn Michaels, because you could always send him out there, have good matches consistently every week. It was good to see him back, getting great reactions. The fans loved him. He was red hot. Nope, just go out there in a shirt that says "All Things Believe" and be a manager with a beret on your head. That's all you're going to do on this show. That's it.
Yeah, but still better than what Triple H and Kevin Nash did. And I honestly thought Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels, to some extent, saved this from being a complete shitfest.
Yeah, thank God that the two greatest of all time possibly were on the outside in this match, because I shudder to think how worse it would have been without them.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Ric Flair, he really helped to carry Kevin Nash in a way, and even though, you can say if he helped carry him, then he failed. To a degree, he did. But the tenacity of Ric Flair to keep on going and like just keep getting in there, keep getting knocked down with one of the 100,000 fucking fists Kevin Nash kept throwing because he could do little else. You know, well done to Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels because they gave us at least something to watch, Travis, in this shitfest.
This is a result in the outcome of this main event and pay-per-view, Matt.
Yeah. And do you know what? Predictable ending. Triple H won. Sledgehammer shot. The last few minutes, okay. I was okay with the last few minutes because it was sort of all-out action. You know, there was a lot going on. But the rest of it was just throwaway. Like, I'd expect to see this if I would have attended a house show in 2003.
Would you rather see this than Roman Reigns currently? Honestly.
That's difficult. Roman Reigns isn't a bad wrestler, okay? Let's get that out there. I don't like him on top of the card. I wish they'd drop him into the mid-card and give someone else a push. I don't like that he's currently being rumoured to take on Brock at SummerSlam, blah-de-blah, or that he gets all the fucking pushes. But Roman Reigns isn't a bad wrestler, Travis. You know,
I should say the booking. Would you rather see this booking then or the booking of Roman now? Which would you, if you had to pick?
Do you know what? I'm going to say probably the booking of Roman now because the match quality is better, mostly.
Yeah, I agree. I would say Roman I would pick over this. This was, even for then watching it and the time, it was the shits. It goes back to what I said at the very beginning of this pay-per-view of SmackDown being better and different than Raw. The main event scene was the epitome of what showed that to me. You had Angle and Brock doing Iron Man matches, and then you had this. Two best buddies phoning it in for an easy payday, with their buddies on the outside phoning it in for a payday too. Not completely phoning it in, but Flair's probably got a little bit of some good stuff in him, feeling good out there, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And Kevin Nash was, that's why he was in the main event in 2003, because his friend was marrying the boss's daughter a few months later. If Triple H had not been who he was in 2003 and where he was, Kevin Nash wouldn't have touched the main event. And Kevin Nash came out on YouTube and said in 2003, WWE got rid of me because they didn't see money in me. You're fucking joking. Of course they didn't see money in you. You're a washed-up has-been. Your knees are fucked. You can't wrestle anymore. Whatever interest you might have had with the fans is gone. And you're clearly, after the curtain call, and they exposed themselves to the business as being best friends, everyone clearly knows you're only where you are in 2003 because of who's on top.
And then he went on to get his hair cut by Jericho because he filmed that Punisher movie at the time, and he'd go on like SummerSlam 03 in the Elimination Chamber, and it was just, see ya. It's not working.
That was it. He left after SummerSlam to undergo neck surgery, and then his contract wasn't renewed in January 2004. And you know what? Losing no sleep over it, Travis.
You know what? Praise the WWE on this one. That was a good call. That was good business. He wasn't reliable physically anymore. He was never great, honestly, at just a main event contender, unless he was in an angle like the Wolfpack, surrounded by incredible talent and an incredible storyline. He was never great as Diesel.
Or in a main event match with Bret Hart.
And key word, Bret Hart. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. He had to have somebody physically and technically superior.
And people are going to argue too. The main event match at WrestleMania 11 with Shawn Michaels is great. Key word, Shawn Michaels. People, there's a pattern here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's like we've been saying with the Bulldog for several weeks. Like,
right,
there had to be someone else better.
Perfect guy to bring up too. Compare his matches with Shawn or Brett, and go watch his main event match with Bulldog in your house, or his matches with Sid in your house. There you have it. That's all you got to know is who was steering the ship in those matches with Brett and Shawn, you could say.
Brett and Shawn.
We did it,
simple.
Matt.
It's like, you can just... It's night and day. You can have a look at Bulldog's matches with anyone else and Nash's matches with anyone else, then go and have a look at their same matches with Michaels, Bret Hart, Owen Hart, etc. And, you can tell who the captain of that ship is.
Ring generals.
Ring generals.
Ring generals. We did it, Matt. Once again, another show's in the books.
I've loved this show, Travis. The pay-per-view wasn't great, but do you know what? I think everyone's been brilliant. And thank you again. We say it every week. I seem to send out a weekly tweet now, Travis, to say thank you to everyone who supported us. But the numbers are great. Your response is great. The reception's great. And just, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. From everyone that supports us weekly, we appreciate it. We're growing, obviously, with our brand new store, Matt. Once again, where can everyone check out our official merch?
You can buy our new T-shirt at unionsmack.bigcartel.com. We will have another shirt out most probably, I don't know what, maybe around Christmas time. We're going to have mugs as well coming in the not too distant future. So, yeah, get it while it's hot, everyone.
Where can they get you while you're hot on your social medias and all that stuff once again, Matt?
Get me while I'm hot. Well, hey, you can get me on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant, and I'll plug my book, Travis, the closer I get to finishing it, because right now it's just a carrot dangling there, waiting to be...
Well, if you're working hard on it every week, it's worth mentioning. People know it's coming.
It is. I just feel like the more I mention it, the further back it gets. It was meant to be out in May. It's now coming to the middle of June, and I'm coming up to halfway through editing it. Like it's ridiculous, the job. Like, part of me wishes I hadn't written so much. And now I hear The Undertaker's coming back next month in Madison Square Garden, which won't be in the book because I can't write anymore. So
get out another chapter in time.
No. The book cuts off at the Greatest Royal Rumble. That's it. Done.
I know it's your favorite part of the show, Matt. Time for me to put my lipstick on, stand on the corner, and whore myself out. As always, follow me on Twitter at the Hibiki TMD. Check out the Reset Button Slampix podcast. All the goodness that goes with the channel. Hit that subscribe right down below. This has been Slam Pigs Union Smack. Until next week, cheerio, mates.